Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, she said, belying her Wisconsin roots. Although in Wisconsin we said roots. Wisconsin roots. We said root beer. No, we didn't. We said root beer, but we said roots. How much sense does that make? I don't know. Don't ask me. It's January 26th. It's sunny. And it's cold as hell, but it's winter. So nothing particularly amazing there. And as I peruse the papers today, it's a whole bunch of bad and disquieting news for the most part, and there's nothing unusual about that. So I guess it's just a normal kind of a day, I guess. I came upon a quote that I just love because, first of all, it's historically correct, and we forget that. And it's by the great Isaac Asimov. He was a scientist, really, wasn't he? A biochemist or something, who happened to write some books and was considered, one of the, at the time, I don't know how in the pantheon of science fiction writers he stands, but he was, at the time he was writing, considered really, really up there. I'm not into science fiction. I just wait a few years and live it, in reality. Hearing about it before it happens is often anxiety producing. And when it comes to anxiety, I produce a lot all by myself. So I just, don't need to go there. Let me find that quote for you. Here it is. Really like this. And he said this 42 years ago, almost to the day. And here it is. There is a cult of ignorance in the United States, and there always has been. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge. And how perfect that quote is for right now. He said that 42 years ago, 1980. Glad he's not around to see just how bad this constant anti-intellectual thread in American history is increasingly dominant, and that an entire political party has fallen to it. It is true. I am no student of American history, but that is so true. I mean, there was even, for God's sakes, a political party called the Know Nothing Party. Championing ignorance right there in the title. We know nothing. Yay, us. I don't know. I think this is also informed in part by, I hate to do too broad a brush here, but I'm just going to say religion. And I don't know what. It's not that this doesn't obviously occur in other countries, but here, alongside that other horrific strain of racism, boy, they're a brutal twosome. Brutal. And they've always been there. They've always caused big trouble for a lot of people, have prevented progress, reveled in that accomplishment. And boy, they're feeling their oats now, the know-nothings. So, nothing new under the sun. Nothing new. Speaking of racism, I just want to note the passing of a woman who fought her whole life to make things better. Alma Speed Fox, just pillar of Black activism here in Pittsburgh, and a treasure to this city. She lived a long life. She lived a good life. And she never stopped eating. I came upon the obituary of another Black man in this country. And I had never heard of him, but reading about his life, and having just thought about Alma Speed Fox, what a great name, Speed Fox. I just was left with a feeling of such sorrow for all of the people in this world who have had extraordinary gifts. Share. Extraordinary gifts. Talent, genius, whatever. And if allowed to practice what they had within them, they would have made the world a better place. And how, when you think of what all these isms, racism, sexism, have cost us all the geniuses who lived and died and perhaps never even got an education only because they were the wrong color, the wrong gender. Think of how much we have lost by only allowing, pretty much, white men to move forward for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries. Think of the loss. And when you do, it's like one of those things where, you know, your head explodes if you sort of let it try to take in that reality. It's somewhat like trying to think of infinity, right? And really stay with it, try to go, and of course, you can't. It hurts your head. This extraordinary loss, because of hatred, fear, greed, ignorance, selfishness, is just astonishing. And to see now in the present the continued, open pushback to keep things as they were. Do not attempt to correct this obvious, extraordinary, self-defeating flaw in human nature and in American history and culture. Just astonishes me. So here's a guy who I want to talk to you about. He lived a long life, as did Alma Fox. Died at 105. Everett Lee. Do you know him? I had never heard of him. Everett Lee, if he had been born a white man, I have little doubt we would have known. Heaven knows the heights to which he would have risen. He was a man who was just gloriously gifted in so many ways. Born in Wheeling, West Virginia. To a barber, a homemaker. Born black. The violin came into his life when he was a child, and he started playing, and whoa, he was good. And his parents recognizing how good he was. And like so many other parents, hoping that this was an indication that their boy was going to go places, even if he was black. They moved up to Cleveland, where they felt he could get a better education. That was 1927. He ran track in high school behind Jesse Owens. Yeah, it's what it says here. And he not only was a great athlete, but he also led the high school orchestra. He worked as an elevator operator. That's the kind of job that I guess was available. And happened to bump in to the concertmaster of the Cleveland Orchestra, a guy named Artur Rodzinski. And Rodzinski took the time to listen to this young man and to hear his interest in music and conducting and violin. And he did something pretty remarkable for a white person at that time. He became a mentor. And he helped Everett Lee get into the Cleveland Institute of Music, which I'm sure did not have a ton of black students. He graduated in 1941, and he immediately enlisted in the Army and trained to become a Tuskegee Airman, which I have little doubt he would have done, but he was injured and was released from the military. This is a guy who's doggedness. He just keeps trying. knowing that no, there are no black concertmasters, there are no black conductors. You're not going to get into a major symphony. You got to be kidding me. He just kept trying. He moved to New York City, and he did get himself a job playing in the orchestra for an Oscar Hammerstein show. And one day the conductor couldn't get in, snowstorm, and he stepped up and conducted. And that was the beginning of a slight breakthrough. It was Leonard Bernstein who later picked him in 1945, just 2 years after he come to New York. 45, Leonard Bernstein, who was the music director of a Broadway show called On the Town, which was later made into a movie. I'm remembering Gene Kelly, Frank Sinatra. Am I remembering that right? About sailors on leave in New York City. Musical. And Leonard Bernstein did something that was, well, it had never been done. He said to Everett Lee, I want you to conduct the orchestra. No black man, no black woman, no one but a white guy had ever conducted an orchestra, an all-white orchestra. Imagine the optics. An all-white orchestra led by a black man. And Bernstein and Everett Lee did it in 1945. In the early 50s, he became the first black man to conduct an all-white orchestra in the South, happened to be Louisville, Kentucky. And then in 1955, he conducted the New York City Opera, another first. He just broke no one had ever done it. No one had ever done it. No one had ever done it. How good do you think he was? I'm just asking. How good do you think he was? Unbelievable. But, and you knew there'd be a but, more often than not, he bumped into people who were not as willing as Hammerstein and Bernstein to allow a black man this level of authority. All too often he heard, what? You want me to put you in front of a white orchestra? Yeah. Ain't happening. Ain't happening. So Everett Lee did what so many did. And here again, a loss to America. He picked up and became an exile. Self-exiled. And went to Europe. That is, by the way, where he died. At his home in Malmo, Sweden. At the age of 105. As much as he broke some barriers, he really couldn't get any traction in this country. And he kept trying and hoping to get back here because he said, I'm an American. That's my home. But he couldn't. And in Europe, he enjoyed much success. But the open ends with this little story. He recalled in a 1997 interview being denied violin auditions at two major U.S. orchestras. He was an extraordinary violinist, okay? And he said, I then made up my mind that if I can't join you, then I will lead you. And I made good on that promise to myself. He wouldn't let him in the orchestra, but he actually, the two orchestras in this country that would not even allow him an audition as a violinist, later in his life, he conducted both of those orchestras. He said, I just had to. I had to show them that I am here. Everett Lee. And you know, as I said, I read it and I almost broke into tears. I'm so, guys, there's so much that we're dealing with now, but I don't think anything is more unbearable than this history of ours. This history that, by the way, the know-nothings in the country, the hate-filled, the people who've always held us back, now are so passionate about not allowing our children to learn. Wow. So back to that Isaac Asimov quote. My God, the incredible stubbornness of that stupidity in America. And how people, I mean, it just blows my mind that people actually want to be associated with stupidity. I'm sorry, I don't get it. Milton has just sent me another Asimov quote. Why was he right? Another one. Asimov said, when stupidity is considered patriotism, it is unsafe to be intelligent. Yeah. Well, Isaac, you're lucky you predeceased this particular moment in American history. My Lord. Barbara just sent me a piece from The Atlantic, which I have not read yet, but it is titled "The Anti-Vaccine Right Brought Human Sacrifice to America." Well, yes, but you know, they didn't bring it to America because human sacrifice, as I've just been suggesting, has always been a big part of America. We sacrifice lives here all the time. But this, by a guy who I think is just brilliant, Kurt Anderson, is talking about the Republican Party and the conservative campaign and Fox News against vaccination. Their campaign against that has claimed Who knows how many lives, how many people have died, have been sacrificed for this political gambit of theirs. Somewhere else I read a question in a headline. How many people has Rupert Murdoch killed? How many people has Tucker Carlson and Fox News killed, and they're still dying? Oh, they're dying. And how is that not a bigger story? You know, I'm sorry, I'm going to get on the media again. But how is it not a huge story that the numbers show that the risk of you, a person in America, dying from this virus is 50% higher if they live in a Republican-controlled state? Republican power kills. How is that not a bigger story? If you live where Democrats govern, you have a chance of continuing to live. A lot better chance than if you live where Republicans govern. The numbers don't lie. That is not a big story, because our media are not inclined to go there because of what they know will be the howls from the know-nothing crowd. Oh gosh, guys, sorry. And then just talking about, I'm sorry, but you know, when it comes to ignorance, the loss of local papers is just, it's huge, and that too does not get enough play. The impact of that on our lives, because it's local papers that cover local government, and it is local government that has the biggest impact on us, from the school boards to the city councils to the mayors and county executives and authorities. That's where the impact on our lives is most acute. And I saw this depressing, I'll share it with you. A woman named Deanna Carpenter put this out a few weeks ago. This is my last week as a freelancer for the Post-Gazette, as the Post-Gazette has decided to stop covering suburban schools and municipalities regularly. That was her job. Her job was to go to the school board meetings and the council meetings in all the smaller towns around here. The PG has decided they ain't going to do that anymore. It will not have a dedicated reporter, even a freelancer. Jesus. She's been doing that since 2014. And they called her in and told her, sorry. Now, you know, I don't know. I'm just saying, there's a whole bunch of stuff that will not be covered that you will have to really struggle to know about. And as you know, most people don't exactly spend their time struggling to learn about what's going on in local government. So I'm just saying. But speaking of local government, I mentioned the other day that this Wilkinsburg annexation is something that I kept seeing about. It came out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden the possibility was there, and people were taking sides, and the city council was going to be and this and that. It appears, this is the latest, it appears that the Pittsburgh City Council is not going to agree to this annexation. So there goes Wilkinsburg. It's not going to. And that's okay with me, just because I think this thing happened so fast. Could we think about this? And in fact, that's exactly what has happened, because there's, excuse me for doing that in your ear. There is legislation introduced that will allow Pittsburgh City Council to begin to investigate annexations and mergers with surrounding communities and their school districts. So it's not as if Pittsburgh has said, nah, we're comfortable where we are. It's that they felt they needed more information. And I guess this legislation passed just yesterday. This is the kind of thing that if you live anywhere other than Pittsburgh, the Post-Gazette's not covering it for you. You don't know about it. Under this legislation that passed yesterday, if this preliminary investigation into potential annexation were to show that some of this makes sense, and annexing this one or that one would be a really good fit, not just for Pittsburgh, but for that municipality, then they might just narrow the scope to those municipalities. Now, here are the ones that are border. Here are the ones that are potentially going to be looked at as, doesn't this make more sense to have this be Pittsburgh rather than Penn Hills, rather than Edgewood, rather than Swissvale, rather than Homestead, West Homestead, Baldwin, Brentwood, Dormont, Crafton, Greentree, McKees Rocks, Etna? I was thinking the other day. I mean, obviously, annexation, what all those places I just said, that should be Pittsburgh, is hardly a radical idea. Will you look at most major cities? They have so much more population than us because geographically they encompass the area that everybody thinks of as that city. It is not so in Pittsburgh. And we have all these little governments and all the stupid, it makes it very hard to be efficient in everything. Because of all these separate little bailiwicks, municipalities, little seats of power, control. Help me here, because this kept me up last night. Doesn't take much to keep me up, but here's what I was thinking, because I was thinking about this. And I thought, how many other cities, and I understand that airports, talking about the airport, that airports, can't be downtown. That would be a little difficult. That the airport in a city is, out there. Got to be out there. Oh, you got enough land and all that kind of stuff, right? I don't think there's anyone who ever flew into the Pittsburgh airport and didn't marvel at how far away it was from Pittsburgh. And people flying in probably don't even know that when they fly into the Pittsburgh International Airport, they ain't in Pittsburgh. So I started to think, wait a minute. When I fly into LaGuardia, Kennedy, am I in New York? I think I am. I know I am with LaGuardia. Is Kennedy also in the city? When I fly into O'Hare, am I not in Chicago? LAX, am I not in Los Angeles, San Francisco? Am I not Dallas, Atlanta? Help me here. Miami? In general, aren't these, I mean, it's not the Pittsburgh airport. And I'm sick and tired of people saying, oh, I live in Pittsburgh, to anybody who's not from Pittsburgh, when they don't. They don't pay taxes here. They don't help to keep this nucleus, the center of this area, prosperous and alive. I say annex the whole bunch. Annex all the way out to the friggin' airport. Pittsburgh would go to what? Maybe even one of the top 10 populations cities. I just don't understand it. And it's stupid. I had to say that. Well, maybe I haven't thought this out. And help me here if you can think of really other major airports that aren't where they say they are. Hey, by the way, did you notice, if you're watching local news, that the woman, and I'm blanking on her name, she must be brilliant and very good at what she does, that has been heading the airport for some years now, was just granted a huge raise. And I suspect it's to keep her from being scarfed up by O'Hare or Atlanta. She's that good. And that she's in our dinky little airport. Our Allegheny County just gave her the biggest raise. She's making over $500,000 a year. She is so far and away the highest paid government worker in Western Pennsylvania. It's a joke. And I can't even think of her name. That's how good that woman, who again, let us think of people whose talents would never have been used before. Women, she didn't have a chance. I mean, a woman couldn't even get a credit card. In my lifetime, I was married. I couldn't get a credit card in my name. Think of all the amazing women who could have done wondrous things because their competency and gifts and talent were extraordinary, but they didn't even get a foot in the door. And again, it goes for any minority, any marginalized group. Thank you, Laura. Okay, that's one. She says Detroit's airport is not in Detroit. It is in what? Romulus? If you told me, well, I'm flying into Romulus International Airport. What? So isn't that odd? It's a misnomer. I mean, what is ours? Is that in Moon? Actually, that's sort of cool. Moon International Airport. Okay. Thank you for that. That's what I was trying to figure. I should have figured that because I've flown into that airport and I do know it's not right. Okay. I think that's on that. Roger writes, in a conversation with my coworker and good friend, talking about becoming more diverse, his problem with the diversity movement is people should be hired on qualifications only. Yeah, like that's happened for all this time when only white guys could get any job of any import. Now that black people and white people, I mean, black people and women and other minority groups, not that women are a minority group, can now get hired. All of a sudden, the white guys are saying, well, now, wait a minute. There have to be qualifications. Now, as the Supreme Court of the United States is about to eviscerate affirmative action, it's because it's outrageous that somebody should be given, a step up. When, for what? For what? Have anything to do with their ability as a student? And one of the cases they're going for has to do with Harvard. Do you know how many of the white students at Harvard are only there? 40% of the white students at Harvard. Well, I don't know if they're only there. Maybe some of them could have made it on their own. But 40% of them are the sons and daughters of Harvard grads, or the sons and daughters of major donors. I wonder if the Supreme Court will look into that in terms of fairness, because that kind of leg up, arm and a leg up, has been available to white people forever. Only when black people want in that, well, I'll go back to Roger's email. He says, his friend says, the problem is that people should be hired on their qualifications only. Roger said, do you think our all-white staff are the best and brightest? Do you think that all of our presidents were better than any woman or minority available at the time? Is Mike Tomlin the only qualified black person who can coach in the NFL? Are all the NFL GMs better than any potential minority candidate? Roger goes on. The guy said he understood my point, but we should hire the best, regardless of race and gender. Then stated that white, straight Christian guys are the minority now. Oh, okay, let's stop. Let's stop now and have a good cry. Oh, the poor beleaguered white, straight Christian guys. Oh my God, my heart breaks. Oh. Damn. Okay. Oh, here's what straight white people do when they've got a chance. What do you mean you can't open the page? I forget. I can't. I only have a little headline here, but I read this piece a few days ago. There is a borough somewhere in the central part of this state that had elections in November, right? And their council became like overwhelmingly Republican in that election. And guess what? One of the first things is they're going to do. They're going to repeal their, I don't know, their town, their city's ordinance giving LGBTQ residents protections in housing, employment, everything. They're going to repeal it. You imagine, first order of business, let's make sure those gays, we get them back where we had them. So this is, yeah. That's because all those good white Christians there are feeling like beleaguered minorities. They're feeling like Anne Frank. I know. They're living in terror. Poor souls. Poor, pathetic souls. By the way, tomorrow I'm going to have a guest for part of the show. He'll be joining us, I think, in the second half of the show. And he is the founder of I call this a program, okay? And it's a writing program for LGBTQ people that are old. Oh, over the age of 50. I don't think anyone in their 50s is old, but they're older. And what they're trying to do is, you know, get the stories of the people who lived most of their lives without any protection at all. At all. He himself is a writer. But we're going to talk about this program. It is based at the University of Pittsburgh. And in its Center for Creativity. So just wanted to say that for tomorrow, if you're interested. And then I have a wonderful story, and maybe you saw it. Don't know. Did you see the story about, you know, these stories pop up every once in a while. Someone puts a message in a bottle, right? And puts the bottle in the ocean. And then pops up, you know, thousands of miles away. And somehow the parties connect. I mean, that would be magical. But this story is, I don't know, it is particularly magical because it involves a 14-year-old at the time. A 14-year-old who threw the bottle in off the side of a fishing boat in Ocean City, Maryland. And he had scribbled the note. I'm going to go look for the note so I can quote it for you. Come on, where's the damn note? I can't find it. Oh, dang it! And he said that, you know, he was a kid. He was with his friend. And, you know, whatever. And if you find it, would you please call this number? Because we'd like to know. Oh, here it is. He says, I love boogie boarding, fishing, and much more. I love riding bikes. I'm a really active person. He went on to say that his three buddies were Stone, Lisa, and Wayne. And then he gave the number and said, please, please call if you find it. Well, this older couple from Belfast were the ones who did. They were vacationing in Donegal in Ireland. And that was just a few weeks ago. They were walking along the beach and they spotted a glass bottle. and they saw that it had paper in it. Interestingly enough, they felt they were starting on an adventure of their own. So they resisted the urge to unravel the wrapped up paper because it was damp. They could see it was a handwritten note. They could see there were 2 $1 bills in it. And so they put it near their fireplace and let it dry overnight. And that's when they opened the letter. Oh, I'm sorry. Sasha, the boy, was 11 years old. He's 14 now. Was 11 years old when he wrote the note. And they called the number. They were very excited. And they were told that the number was no longer in service. Now, the reason the number was no longer in service was because one of the friends that this 11-year-old boy was with that day was an older man. It was his neighbor, Wayne Smith. And they spent tons of time together. Despite that, Wayne was 50 years older than Sasha. They just loved fishing together. They were best of friends. They had found the bottle together, and it had 2 $1 bills in it. And it had a note in it from 2 American women who they couldn't track down. But the letter from the women said, pass it on, which is why he wrote a little note. They put it in the bottle. They kept the $1 bills, and they threw it back into the ocean. This bottle is found twice. They threw it off, Wayne and he threw it off the side of the boat. They figured it would get into the Gulf Stream. They never expected it. I would not either, to turn up in Ireland. The reason the number that they called, the Irish couple called, was said to be not available, disconnected, is because Wayne, the older of the pair that threw the bottle in, died. Sasha, the boy, was grieving the loss of his friend. And so, thank God, this indomitable Irish couple, after not getting anywhere with the phone call, figured out with the phone number what the locality was, called a radio station or a newspaper, but they wanted to find this kid to let him know that the bottle had been found. Almost 3 years later. And because Wayne Smith had been dead not for too long, this created such a joy for the boy and his family. Because by getting in touch with a newspaper or something, somehow they figured out who the bottle belonged to. So, something wonderful about it. And the kid says, You know, it's just a perfect reminder of his wonderful friendship. But he said, I wish they, the Irish couple, lived next door to us, like Mr. Wayne. And because the Irish couple and the kid and his family have been communicating over the phone for the last few weeks, they are now, Sasha is going with his parents on a trip to Ireland to meet them, to see where his bottle was found. And the Irish couple, they got the bottle. They're holding on to it. And they're going to write their own note with the same pass it on instructions that the original women had written on their note. And when Sasha comes to visit them, they'll leave the bottle on the beach, let it be taken out to sea, and they'll do that with Sasha at their side. Imagine that bottle for years and years, bobbing along in the ocean and ending up 3,200 miles away. And it's just too bad that Wayne wasn't around to know it. So there was that story, which I thought was lovely. I wanted to share. Bob says, we all know that the same people who freaked out when Biden on a hot mic called Fox reporter Peter Doocy a stupid son of a bitch. You know what, Bob? I'm not even going to go on with this because I'm done. I cannot bear faux outrage over something like that, given their total lack of outrage over the vile, despicable things that the former president said 10 times a day, the belittling of people with disabilities, of women, of, I mean, you name it. And they're going to clutch their pearls because Joe Biden was heard to mutter a truism that Ducey's a son of a bitch. Oh, I can't do it anymore. I can't. Well, my son was over the other day and he said, so what do you think about the M&Ms and the Lady M&M? And I said, you know what? I am aware that something, some redesign, something, blah, blah, blah. I refuse to. I'm done with all these attempts. Well, maybe not all. Some do grab me. These attempts to distract me with nonsense when there's such important stuff to pay attention to. I'm sick of being played. I'm just sick of it. Okay. You know, the one thing I wanted to talk about today, I never got around to. How did that happen? I swear when I started the show, I was going to start on, had to do with the Supreme Court. Boy, is that a misnomer now. It should not be called supreme in any way. But such is America 2022. All right, you guys, I guess that's it for me. Enjoy your day. Stay warm. We'll have a free and open show tomorrow, and we'll talk to this gentleman who's trying to get the stories, almost like instead of an oral history, it's a written history of the lives of gay Americans before it was okay to be gay, which wasn't that long ago. Okie doke. Bye-bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.